The seventh testing chamber was located on the lowest level of the analysis station. It was neither large nor equipped with the intricate arrays found in the high-tier research sectors. The room was originally meant for inspecting broken mechanisms, defective artifacts, or items that no longer held strategic value. TCN's mechanical frame was placed at the very center. No one seemed particularly interested. To most of the technicians, this was merely a low-level anomaly exaggerated by insufficient data. The only remarkable thing about it was the fact that it operated without spiritual energy, but according to them, that merely proved it was using some form of residual power source yet to be identified. Prepare for the final measurement, the lead researcher said flatly, then move it into storage. There was no tension in the room, no sense that they were about to uncover something revolutionary. It was simply procedure. TCN stood behind the observation glass, his hands gripping the edges of his robe tightly. He was not allowed inside, nor permitted to touch the frame. He was merely an informational assistant, a living source of data. He stared at the mechanism, a strange feeling rising within him. That thing had once been in his hands. Now it felt as though it belonged to another world entirely. Begin test 1, the lead researcher ordered. A technician activated the spiritual energy detector and placed it near the frame's central axis. As before, the screen displayed a completely flat line. No spiritual energy. Continue. The mechanical vibration scanner was activated next. Sensors attached themselves to the gears, joints, and rotating shafts. There is movement. Stable amplitude. No external power source detected. One of the researchers frowned. Then where is the force coming from? Possibly an energy storage mechanism, another replied. Ancient mechanisms often use similar methods. The hypothesis was accepted almost reflexively. And so they continued. Test 2. Complete isolation from ambient spiritual energy. The chamber was sealed, and a spirit-nullifying formation activated, turning the room into an almost complete vacuum of energy. If the frame relied on spiritual energy in any way, even indirectly, it should have stopped. But it did not stop. The gears continued turning, neither faster nor slower, steady as an ancient clock. Inside the control room, silence lingered for several breaths for the first time. Record the result, the lead researcher said, his voice no longer entirely calm. Test 3. Spiritual interference injection. A chaotic stream of spiritual energy flooded the chamber, enough to disrupt most low-grade artifacts. Warning lights flashed, and nearby equipment trembled faintly. The mechanical frame showed no reaction. It did not resist. It did not absorb. It simply did not care. Stop, one technician whispered. This isn't right. What isn't right? The lead researcher asked. Its response, the technician answered, it's unlike any mechanism I've ever seen. It's not immune to spiritual energy. It's independent. The word echoed through the room like something forbidden. Independent, not reliant on spiritual energy, unaffected by energetic environments, existing outside every known operational model. The lead researcher stared at the data. For the first time, unease crept into him. According to accepted theory, such a mechanism should not exist. Continue with the final test, he said after a pause. Increase the load. A force-generating device was attached to the frame, pushing it far beyond its stable operating threshold. Many artifacts failed under this kind of pressure, either shattering or triggering chaotic spiritual reactions. The force increased steadily. The frame trembled slightly. Then, it adjusted itself, not through spiritual formations, but by altering the rotational rhythm of its gears, redistributing mechanical force in a crude yet effective manner. That's feedback control, someone murmured. No. Another shook his head. Feedback requires spiritual cognition or formation logic. Then what do you call this? No one answered. At that exact moment, Elsie turned, sensing everything from afar, slowly opened his eyes. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Not when the frame began moving, but when humanity began running out of words to describe it. When the testing ended, the atmosphere in the control room was no longer routine. The technicians exchanged uncertain glances, carrying a kind of doubt they were unaccustomed to confronting. How are we supposed to write the report? One asked quietly. The lead researcher fell silent, If they reported the truth, they would have to state that a mechanism without spiritual energy had demonstrated self-adjustment, capabilities, and stable operation within a spirit-nullified environment. That would mean admitting that the entire current classification system contained a flaw, and he did not want to be the first person to write such a sentence. Classify it as a specialized ancient mechanism, he finally decided, potentially powered by an unidentified energy storage system. Further long-term study required. The wording was chosen carefully. Not false, but not true either. The report climbed through layers of administration, each level adding another layer of interpretation, another veil of ambiguity. By the time it reached the higher authorities, it had become little more than an interesting ancient artifact with no immediate threat potential. TCN was escorted back to the waiting room. No one told him the results. No one asked what he thought. But when he looked into the technician's eyes, he knew something had changed. Not within the mechanical frame, but within their understanding of the world. In one corner of the testing chamber, the mechanical frame rested motionless. Yet anyone sensitive enough would have noticed something strange. The background oscillation surrounding it had changed. Not stronger, but clearer, like a sound once buried beneath static that had finally begun separating itself from the noise. Turn smiled faintly. You conducted your tests, he thought, and you saw it, but you still do not dare to name it. To him, the experiment had not failed. On the contrary, it had been a perfect success, because the system had reacted exactly as he predicted. When confronted with something it could not explain, it would force that thing into the old framework instead of changing the framework itself. And in that very moment, the paths of both sides had completely diverged. On the side of the Alliance, they believed they had contained the anomaly. On Turn's side, he knew that from this moment onward, spiritless machinery had officially entered the world's awareness, even if only as a shadow. And once a shadow exists, the old light can never remain whole again.